What's up, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors along with Sean Hammond, and a lot to discuss here as we get ready for week 2, Sean. But before we really do, man, how much of that game did you get to watch last night? Because I was editing while it was going on, but every time I looked up, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, not really surprising here, but making some pretty awesome plays.
Yeah, I caught the second half. Maybe tuned in like right before halftime, and then caught most of the second half. They were looking really impressive, and that was certainly lived up to the hype as far as a game with two really good teams, big matchup within the division. It's going to be fun watching those teams moving forward.
Yeah, you have Patrick Mahomes extending that play and then sidearming it to Jerick McKinnon, which was hilariously just awesome. You have Justin Herbert, who, when he went down, I did not think was getting back up. As someone who loves good football, Justin Herbert delivers a lot of that. And I don't know about you, Sean, but I really don't want to live in a league where we don't have Justin Herbert this year.
Yeah, you listen to some of these national shows and read all this stuff, and obviously the Justin Herbert hype train was real high this offseason, and it's kind of a bummer to see that injury happen so early in the season, and now you wonder what that's going to look like moving forward, because he was in some obvious pain there down the stretch of that game, and there was that one play, he leaked out of the pocket and started running, and then just threw the ball away. It looked like he was having some issues there. Um, I think it was confirmed that it was a rib injury. It certainly looked like a rib injury. Hopefully they can get him back soon. We saw that with Justin Fields last year. That's an injury that's gonna, if it is some cracked ribs, that's gonna set you out for a while. But he should be back, you would think.
Yeah, you would think he'll be back, even if he does have to miss some time with those cracked ribs. I'm sure it's worse today than it was last night.
And it's one of those
But
things that you could play through too. It's just pain management.
yeah, pain tolerance. Yeah, I think you mentioned there that Justin Fields had the cracked ribs last year. When you look at Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert, though, those guys making the plays that they did, that's really what you hope. And I'm not saying it's going to be anywhere near that level because those two guys are on a different plane right now. But if Justin is able to develop those playmaking skills, those abilities to extend plays and get positive yards out of situations where you think it's pretty hopeless, the Bears would be in much better shape. But we're going to find out a lot about where the Bears offense stands this weekend in Green Bay on Sunday Night Football, Sean, as long as we get some better weather conditions, and it's looking that way heading into week 2. But I want to start on the Packers side of things because when we start to preview Bears Packers, I don't think there's any way you can start without looking at the offensive line for Green Bay. You have David Bakhtiari and Elgton Jenkins. Neither played week 1. Both have been limited in practice this week. Bakhtiari didn't play or practice at all yesterday, but it does sound like that was more of a maintenance day where they're going to have him practice Wednesdays and Fridays and off on Thursday, but something to watch. John Runyon is in concussion protocol. There's a chance the Packers head into this game down 3 starting offensive linemen.
Yeah, and you look at you look at those struggles in week 1 with the Packers, and when you dig a little deeper and you look at those injuries at tackle, they were without Alan Lazard, who was supposed to be their number 1 receiver, and it's not a surprise that they struggled in that game, and certainly that's still going to be an issue here moving forward. This is going to take a couple of weeks for the Packers to get all this sorted out, to get healthy on that offensive line. We'll have to monitor Alan Lazard. I think maybe there's probably a good chance that he plays this week, but that's still a little bit up in the air. He was limited on Thursday. If you're the Bears, this is a good chance to maybe surprise some people and pull one off against the Packers. This is going to be your best chance because these guys are banged up. They struggled in week 1. They're figuring some things out offensively. And I certainly would rather, if you're the Bears, I'd rather get one now and not have to try to do it in December.
Absolutely. And it's the line opened after week 1. I believe the Bears were a 9.5-point underdog, and I pretty quickly moved to 10. We're gonna have Shane Jackson, our colleague at Bet Chicago Sports, on in a little bit to talk about that more. But that there was kind of an indication of how Vegas and how Vegas expects the betting public to view the Bears going into this game. And despite the fact that the Bears probably outperformed most people's expectations in week 1, even if you have the huge caveat of the weather condition, and the Packers really underperformed. I think that despite that the Bears come into this maybe 9.5 or 10 points underdog was too much, but they are a considerable underdog even with that the week one results.
Yeah, look, they're still a young football team. A lot of these guys have never played at Lambeau Field. You got 15 rookies. You got uh, a really young roster outside of the rookies too, and some of these guys had some experience going up there last year, and they played a really good first half, but they weren't able to finish it off. And you're still looking at Aaron Rodgers over there on the other side, and that's the problem. This Packers team might take a little while to get rolling, but I certainly think they are going to be rolling. And you know, a game against your chief rival at home for the Packers, I just see this is a really tough game any time of year, whether you're coming off a win, coming off a loss. I don't think it really matters for the Bears. This is going to be one of their tougher opponents all season, and you're under the bright lights of Sunday night. It's certainly not easy, even though the Packers struggled last week against the Vikings.
Yeah, absolutely. Quickly want to get a couple propers out of the way. Make sure you are following Sean and I on Twitter. You can follow Sean at Sean_Hammond, at Kyle Nabors for myself. Of course, you can get all of our coverage at Bears_Insider, and everything is available on ShawLocal.com. And of course, want to give a shout out to our sponsor for the Bears Insider podcast, Marengo Guns. Always buying, always paying top dollar for your guns, ammos, and military items. Come see the experts at Marengo Guns. Open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. And now, Sean, I wanted to start with the offensive line for Green Bay, but the other thing that was interesting to me, and it's a storyline to watch, is how they employ their running backs. Because in week one, it wasn't quite the AJ Dillon show, but it was more AJ Dillon centric than I expected, particularly in a game script where Green Bay was behind. I really thought Aaron Jones was going to be utilized more in the passing game. AJ Dillon was that guy, though. I'm pretty sure he had, I don't have it right in front of me. I want to say 7 targets in that game, though. I kind of feel like this plays into the Bears' strength on their defense, though, as they have that young secondary that did perform pretty well in week one. But, you're going up against Aaron Rodgers in better weather conditions. But the Packers want to run the ball. They want to use Aaron Jones, and apparently they really want to use a lot of AJ Dillon. But I think that plays into the Bears' strength, Sean. Do you think if that is a heavy run game approach from Green Bay, that it sets up for the Bears?
Well, it certainly sets up for keeping the clock moving and maybe a little bit lower scoring game if that's what they are trying to do. You look at the stat line. Aaron Jones 5 touches in the run game. That's surprising that was the case. AJ Dillon had 10 touches, and then, like you were talking about in the passing game, AJ Dillon was their leading receiver. That's, if you're the Packers, you could make the argument that's a good thing. You can make the argument that's a bad thing, and they're having to check down a lot. I certainly, those two guys are really dangerous, and the Packers got 2 really good running backs, and it's not a surprise that they want to use them both. But it is maybe a little bit of a surprise that Aaron Jones wasn't utilized more. And I certainly think that might be an emphasis here this week as they're moving ahead, and they want to, they sort of got a feel for what the game was like last week, and now they can make their adjustments and say, we got to get this guy a little bit more involved.
Well, you talk about a changing of the way an offense operates. Davante Adams leaving or being traded to Las Vegas, which, by the way, there was a lot of people, at least in the fantasy football community. I'm getting off track here, but I find it interesting. Like a lot of people, smart people that I trust in the fantasy football community, were wondering about Davante Adams' workload in Vegas. And I believe he had like a 46% target share in week one. So apparently the Davante Adams show is going to continue, but 46% target share isn't sustainable. But he had well into the mid 30s with Green Bay over the last couple of years. That's a lot of targets to go around. And then Alan Lazard misses last week. You have Christian Watson drops a stone cold drop on, I believe, the opening drive for Green Bay in week one, a rookie that we do have high expectations for. Sammy Watkins is on the wrong side of his career. There are a lot of question marks when you combine the wide receiver questions with the offensive line questions for this Green Bay offense, Sean.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of questions, and you watch that drop from Watson, and the broadcast pans right to Aaron Rodgers' face, and he's just like, whoa, he's got this dumbstruck look. Yeah, that's not a great way to start off your career, but certainly he showed some speed, and that dude can get open. You just got to finish the play and catch the ball. They're going to have a little bit of issues here with this receiving core, and figuring out, who's good at what and what they can do as an offense. And that's kind of what you expect when you have so much turnover. You lose a guy like Devontae Adams. You're not going to just be able to replace him right away. And two, I know Matt LaFleur is still there, but you lost your offensive coordinator, you lost your quarterbacks coach. Those guys both got other jobs elsewhere. Luke Getsy, of course, is here as the OC in Chicago. They're going to have to figure some things out, and that's going to be a group effort. That's the way that these coaches look at these things. Luke Getsy told us this week. Somebody asked him about his play calling, the first time play calling in the NFL, and he said, it's really a group effort in all the work and preparation that these guys do ahead of the game. By the time you get to game day, you're really just following the plan you have already put in place. And so, there's some new faces up in Green Bay trying to figure that out. And you throw in the fact that they lost Devontae Adams, and they're doing it with different weapons. You watch the tape on that Green Bay game. There were some times, the drops stand out. Obviously, the Watson drop stands out. There were a couple other just miscommunications between Rodgers and his receivers where, they probably wanted to run the route slightly differently, or maybe throw it, to a different shoulder, or little things like that, where you're like, I can see those being cleaned up in the next couple of weeks.
Definitely. If anyone is joining us live here on YouTube, throw your question into the chat. That helps us kind of steer the show, just understand what you guys would like to talk about. Dale Bishop has a question here. I had said earlier about the weather being okay. He said, if the current forecast hold, which team would benefit more from bad weather? Would it actually help the Packers because it would force them to use their run game more? I think first I had pulled it up here to double check. When you talk about the weather forecast, this is not a situation where it's widespread rain like we saw on Sunday or on Sunday in Chicago. There is a 30% chance of thunderstorms, but that sounds, just eyeballing it from the National Weather Service, sounds more of an isolated nature. Like if someone ends up over the stadium, like that could be an issue, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be widespread, where we're going to be dealing with it. And particularly, if it's a thunderstorm, even that presents a whole new challenge, which, oh God, now Dale, now you're kind of scaring me because we'll be right on deadline for all of our print products.
We don't need a lightning delay.
Yeah, none of that. So Dale, hopefully that doesn't come into play, but I don't know if it necessarily would help the Packers if they needed to use their run game, because they already want to use their run game, right, Sean?
Yeah, that's what they want to do. And I'm looking at the forecast now, and it looked worse yesterday, honestly. We woke up this morning. I think it looks a little bit better. Obviously, we're still a couple days out, so it's one of those things you just kind of keep an eye on it, but try not to make too much out of it yet. The Packers do want to establish that run game, and I think the Bears want to do a better job of that too. You watch that film and against the 49ers, and they really weren't giving David Montgomery much to work with in that first half. And you certainly need the blocking to be better to create some holes. And Khalil Herbert looked good, but actually it was Getsy who told us, he had a couple more favorable blocking situations ahead of him where he just hit the hole, and credit to him for doing that. But David Montgomery is still going to be your number one guy, and you got to get him going a little bit. You got to give him some opportunities to run the ball. And certainly I think both teams could be looking to do that on Sunday.
Yeah, David Montgomery, you definitely need to get him going. I do think that you look at the week one results. It's hard to read too much into that, or it's a small sample size, I guess, is what I'm trying to say here. But Dale had said, do you think the Packers defense is better than the 49ers defense? I think they're probably pretty similar. I like the pass rush for both teams. I have questions about the secondary for both teams. Obviously Jair Alexander's great. Adrian Amos is playing pretty well, but you look at the week one stuff, and Justin Jefferson really ran all over the field on the Packers. And Dalvin Cook didn't have the game you would expect with Minnesota in the lead. So like I said, it's only 1 week, so it's hard to read too much into that. I do think the Green Bay Packers did a good job of addressing their concerns defensively in the offseason, though, Sean. I expect this to be a really solid defense throughout the year from Green Bay.
Yeah, I do think this defense will come together. You know, they spent some really high draft picks on some guys to bring in there and bolster that defense. I was also a little surprised by the easy success that Justin Jefferson had in that game. There were a couple times where there was nobody around him, and you know I think a large part of that was the Packers were sticking in their zone rather than putting a guy on Justin Jefferson, and I don't know that that's really the way to beat an elite receiver like that. But I don't know that the Bears have a guy who really can do the types of things that Justin Jefferson can do. You know, that guy is a unicorn in the NFL. He's one of the rare guys who can beat you in a number of different ways. You know, certainly you want to get Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet involved because they weren't really involved at all in that first game, and that was that was partially because of the situation and the rain, and they only threw the ball, 17 pass attempts, 8 completions for Justin Fields. But you want to see Cole Kmet catching some balls in between the hashes, and you want to see Darnell Mooney get a couple of more touches. Just to test, you got to test that. You see the Packers struggle like that. You look at that and you say, okay, we got to test these guys and see if they have made any adjustments after last week.
Yeah, with the way that the Vikings were able to move the ball through the air, and Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet have to be more involved in the offense if the Bears are going to have success long term. I do expect them to get the ball into those guys' hands quicker. Mark Kazik had a question here. I have a question. Who is better running back, David Montgomery or Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon? I think the fair question there is if you're going to say Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, you need to say David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert because you're looking at a couple pairings there. It's a real tough question. It to me, it's pretty close. I mean, David Montgomery flies under the radar a bit because the Bears have been so bad, but he's been really solid. Khalil Herbert, like you saw it last week, 9 carries, 45 yards, has had some explosiveness. But I do think I have to give it to Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon overall here, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, just the track record and the work that they've done over the last few years is I think speaks to that. And certainly I would say that as well. But David Montgomery absolutely flies under the radar, He's a guy who was top 5 in total yards 2 years ago and was on pace to have another really good year if he didn't have that knee injury last year, missed 4 games. So certainly if he stays healthy, he can definitely work his way into that conversation.
Yeah, Mark, I think my answer, the best way I can describe it is I think David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert would have even better success in a more complete offense, or a more functional offense, and hopefully we're going to see that more than definitely more than we've seen over the last couple of years, and more than we saw in Week 1. But without knowing that, I have to give it to AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones right now.
And that's my concern with David this year is you look at the run blocking in that first game, and it wasn't very promising. Now there's been such an emphasis on that all offseason. I think they're going to work some things out, and certainly they're going to settle on. Eventually, they're probably going to settle on somebody at right guard, and as Braxton Jones gets some more reps under him, that's going to certainly help as these guys get more experience. But you have some concerns when you're looking at that run game from Week 1.
Yeah, and Mike Johnson said, I like the play of the Bears offensive line. How did the individual linemen grade out? Sean, I'll toss it over to you, but quickly, as you had kind of already alluded to, much better in pass protection than in run protection. Now, as we said, Bears only attempted 17 passes in that game, but the pass protection did get better as the game wore on. Overall, the offensive line got better as the game wore on. But yeah, the ground game was definitely the bigger struggle of the two.
Yeah, and you look at that, and even just looking at that one thing, the run blocking, they improved in the second half, and I think you saw that with a couple of those Khalil Herbert runs where he was able to just hit the hole right up the middle and picked up 8-9 yards or I can't remember off the top of my head, but that wasn't there in the first half. So they made some adjustments there. Certainly Braxton Jones, he had that one bad play against Nick Bosa where Bosa just blew right through him. But other than that, I thought he had a really good game. That was the only time where you looked at it and said that he didn't do what he was supposed to do. Tevin Jenkins had a missed block on one of the sacks early in the game too. We'll just
which
kind of have to,
which caused us to think he was getting benched, I think.
yeah, we'll kind of have to monitor that moving ahead. Certainly, he doesn't have a lot of experience at that guard position, and that's sort of the risk you take when you put a guy out there with 2 games of preseason action under his belt, and that's it. Um, so I don't know what's going to happen there with Lucas Patrick and Tevin. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep that rotation for another week.
I'd say
I also
maybe one more
maybe
week.
one more. I also wouldn't be surprised if they just make a decision, but um, you know, I would kind of lean towards at this point, based on what we've heard from Getsy and from Eberflus, they might have that rotation for another week here. Um, and then across the board, other than that, I thought Sam Musfer was fine. Cody Whitehair did his job. Cody Whitehair's always solid. And Larry Borum didn't really have any glaring mistakes, I thought.
Yeah, the offensive line played pretty well, like we said, as the game progressed. The only question is that right guard spot, right? And we just don't know, about. We probably won't know until several series in again this week. But they're going to have to make a decision at some point. I do think they need another week of film on that. And they're going to get some challenges here from this front seven of the Packers defense that should help them identify it. I think one thing that does kind of lean in Lucas Patrick's favor in terms of if they wanted to go with one person is the fact that he knows this Green Bay team obviously very well coming over as a free agent with the Packers. So I do think that might play a little bit into it. But overall, I do think that they're probably going to rotate Sean.
Yeah, that's a great point. He knows what's going on there. He gave us a silly quote earlier this week. Somebody asked him about going back to Lambeau. He said, well, if the bus gets lost, I can lead us there. I know where I'm going. So I kind of rolled my eyes at that, but he likes to poke fun in those moments. But he certainly knows what this Packers team is all about. He's gone up against those guys in practice, a lot of those guys on the defensive line. So he has firsthand experience doing that. And you're right. That's a huge thing. And that might be a reason why you want to go with Lucas Patrick, either full time or certainly in crunch time.
Yeah, the Bears are pretty healthy coming out of week one. The only real question you have is at right guard. Or there's 2 questions, I should say. One's at right guard, but that's not an injury thing. The other is Aviles Jones, and Timothy Wire had said, do you think Aviles Jones plays, and will he be able to have an impact? Sean, Aviles practiced on Wednesday, but then did not practice on Thursday, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of been this same thing that we've seen throughout camp. He's out with the hamstring injury for a few days. He tries to work back, and then he's out again after that. And so he came back a week ago Monday before week one. They had a light practice on that Monday. He practiced, but then he sat out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, sat out the game. Tried to go this week, or did go on Wednesday, and now he's out again with that same hamstring injury that's been nagging him this whole time. And when you're a speedster, when you're a guy who really utilizes your speed, a hamstring injury, those soft tissue injuries are not what you want. And that's certainly going to hinder his ability to do what he to play to his strengths on the field. Given that he sat out Thursday, at this point, it's Friday morning. We don't have the Friday injury report yet. They're going to practice a couple hours from now. I would lean towards he's probably not going to play, but that's just me going off my gut. If he does play, I certainly do expect they'll get the ball in his hands a couple of times. Will he have a huge impact? I'm not really ready to say that yet. I do think the place where he could have a huge impact is in the return game, because I think if he's able to play, they're going to put him out there. Treston Ebner was the lead kick returner last week, and did a fine job. But you want Aviles Jones back there. I think that's a spot where they're going to try to get the ball in his hands.
Rick Gonzalez says, what defensive rookie will have the bigger impact this season, Dom Robinson or Jaquan Brisker? Sean, I'll let you wade into that one.
Yeah,
first.
This is a fun one. Just off the top of my head, I'm going to go with Brisker because I think he's going to be around the football a little bit more. Dom Robinson had a really good first game, and you love to see that sack where he's busting through there and swinging around Trey Lance. That's awesome. But I think Jaquan Brisker is going to be around the football a lot more, and I think that's maybe the reason why he's going to be one of those big impact type of guys. And you saw that immediately in week one. Jalen Johnson punches out the football and Brisker's right there to jump on it. He's a guy who's going to be used all over the field, so that's going to play to your advantage there because he's not just in that one spot. They can bring him on a blitz if they want to. They can put him against a tight end if they want to. They can use him all over the place, and that's going to give him opportunities to make big plays in big situations.
Yeah, Rick, I agree with Sean. Pretty much everything he said there. Through week one, at least, I think Jaquan Brisker is going to have the longer term impact on the season. But Dom Robinson did make you wonder, but it's just one game, so I don't want to draw too much of a conclusion from that. Anything you get from Dominic Robinson, though, as a fifth round draft pick that you really thought was going to be someone that was only going to help you maybe in year two, maybe even to year three. It was a developmental draft pick. So to see him have, that immediate burst, that immediate impact, it's great to see, but it's a really small sample size. So I definitely have to stick with Jaquan Brisker there, Sean.
And it's hard with pass rushers too, because you really only have one or two stats that really tell you what's going on, and that's sacks and tackles for loss. And we've seen how that can be a little bit misleading at times. You look at the next gen stats and from week one, and Robert Quinn was actually the closest to the quarterback on a consistent average. He was getting closer than anybody else on that Bears defensive line. Didn't have any sacks to show for it. You don't really see that, when you look in the stat book or when you necessarily are watching the film, you see guys like Dominique Robinson standing out. And so I think that can be a little bit, I don't want to say fluky, because Dom, he made a sack. He made a sack and a half. That was really good. Those were some really good plays, but those things can come and go throughout the season.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I want to bring Shane Jackson in here. Almost already starting with the Shane and Sean thing.
Wow, it's 10 o'clock already.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock. This moves along quick here. I'm going to confuse Shane and Sean all season long, though. But anyway, Shane Jackson now joining us for our colleague with Bet Chicago Sports. Shane, man, how'd week one treat you?
Not too bad. I did really well on the sides. Probably missed on most of my totals other than the Bears game, and then came back and ruined it by betting a late game total just before kickoff on the over. So totals were not my friend in week one, but I pretty much crushed on the spreads, which was good because a lot of the spreads we played out here in the circa millions, and we had a pretty good week one.
What did the Bears Niners close at? Do you know?
It still closed at 6.5. I believe was the final number.
I guess I'm sorry. I should have specified there. What was the over under?
Okay.
On that when that game.
Yeah. It was 38 at Caesar Sportsbook. The odds partner at Bet Chicago Sports. I think 37.5 is what it was at one other sports book. It was pretty low. And honestly, I thought there was a chance it could have gone over just a little bit, right? A couple of miscues in the red zone, especially on the 49ers side of things. I feel like that there could have been a couple more scores in that game. But it was definitely a hard day to have offensive success.
Yeah, it was fun watching the in-game total just continue to drop Sunday during that absolute slog of a game in the rain. Brian Lindgren popped in here, Sean, and said, "What is the latest on the Packers O-line injuries? What is the impact the Bears can exploit if the backup O-line is in?" What do you got on that, Sean?
So the latest was Thursday. David Bakhtiari did not participate. John Runyon with the concussion at guard, he also did not participate. And then Elton Jenkins was limited with his knee injury. You're certainly looking at guys. One guy we were just talking about, Dom Robinson and Robert Quinn, and they have an opportunity here to go up against some guys with less experience on those edges. And especially if both tackles are unable to go, that's a huge advantage for the Bears defense.
And an interesting point to make with that too is they need to get the ball out quick with the offensive line and the shape that it is in. And as we were talking about earlier, that used to be Devontae Adams. That was Aaron Rodgers' go-to guy. If he knew pressure was coming, that 3-4 yard pass over to Devontae Adams and let him do something with it and turn it into 7 or 8 yards, doesn't have that anymore. And we'll see if Allen Lazard, if he's able to play, is able to become that guy. But Shane, when you see what the Packers did offensively last week, struggling without both offensive tackles, now potentially without them again, potentially without John Runyon if he's unable to clear concussion protocol, the Bears still open at a 9.5 point dog, and I think it was pretty quickly bet up to 10 points. Given everything you saw out of week 1 and the way things are trending on the Packers injury front, do you think that number is too high, or the Bears too much of an underdog?
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? Like this is the prime example of when you see a game with this low of a total, right? The total is 41.5. You usually don't see a spread in double digits. And that was kind of the whole argument to back the Bears last week against the 49ers, because the total was similarly low and it was still a touchdown. Now you're getting more points against the Packers. So I do think it's one or the other, right? If you think maybe the Bears are making this more competitive than we think, or there's going to be more points scored, and the Packers maybe could pour it on them, or maybe the Bears find more success on the offensive side of things. But it doesn't seem like it's going to both the Packers cover the spread and the total go under unless the Bears just don't score. And so I think there's ways to navigate through both markets. In terms of what they did in week 1, though, I mean, both these teams kind of already had the sense of being more of an under team going into the season. And I think, week 1 kind of confirmed it. Obviously, the Bears played in a bit of a monsoon, and maybe that inflated it a little bit. But the Packers definitely will have offensive struggles to start the season.
Jabari Lou here said, I'd like to know what Shane's top 4 picks are for Sunday. Shane, before you answer that, though, Jabari, if you could give us a little bit more, are you looking for like team totals, any kind? What are you looking for? Are you looking for props? Let Shane know on that. And Sean, I want to ask you. See, I actually said Sean and worried that I said Shane. Sean, as we were saying, a low total in this game. Do you expect this to be another low-scoring affair? Do you expect the Bears maybe to try and push the pace at all to see what they can do on offense, or is it going to be kind of ground and pound?
No, I expect to see kind of what we saw last week in terms of just using, trying to get that run game going. And Luke Getsy talked about how they, at halftime, they made some minor adjustments, but they were pretty much sticking to their plan. And I think they're going to stick to their plan, moving forward here. I don't think that's going to change. And I think that could lead to a little bit lower scoring game, especially if the Packers are still trying to work out the kinks on their end.
Jabari comments back here, spreads, baby. So Shane, there you go. We're looking for some Sunday spreads. Which ones stand out to you this week?
Well, it won't be 4 because there aren't 4 that stand out to me. This is a tough week to bet. It's almost like everyone talked about, hey, don't overreact to week 1, so much so that now we're underreacting to week 1 because almost all the spreads are in line with the numbers I had going into the season, and it's just hard to find a whole lot of value. That said, I did play 2 spreads earlier in the week. I played the Commanders at +2.5 and wrote about it at shawlocal.com/bet. It's down to 1.5. The Lions are still the most popular side so far of the week, but this goes with what I've been saying pretty much all summer, is that I think the betting market loves the Lions a little bit too much. It's almost like they're getting more credit for their narrow loss in which they scored 4 touchdowns trailing by double digits than Washington is getting for winning against Jacksonville, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The Lions have been underdogs for 24 games in a row, Super Bowl era record. This will be their first time being a favorite since 2020. I'll bet against that. You've been betting on the Lions to cover as an underdog. Now you need them to win the game, something they've only done 3 times under Dan Campbell. I'll take the points with Commanders. I've taken them on the money line, and I've teased them with my other pick, which is the Panthers +2.5 against the Giants. Basically, these 2 teams played the same exact game in week 1. They both made a late charge in the fourth quarter. The difference being the Panthers lost, the Giants won. This spread was closer to a pick 'em entering the year. I think this is too many points. And so I'm taking the Panthers, against the Giants because I'm not trusting Daniel Jones to win by a field goal. I think Baker Mayfield found something towards the end there. And honestly, the Panthers defense made a lot of stupid mistakes that kind of gifted the Browns some points. There was a pass interference in the first quarter. There was a roughing the passer late in the game that set up the game-winning field goal. So I just think a little bit too many points. And so that's why I'm taking the Panthers. And it feels weird. I'm going to be sitting on Sunday cheering for Carson Wentz and Baker Mayfield. Otherwise, I'm going to be broke on Sunday. But I think those are really the only values on the spreads in week 2.
I need Baker Mayfield to pull it together because I'm a big best ball guy. I do a ton of drafts over the summer trying to find some early value. But one of my big things was, even if I was picking first, I was taking Christian McCaffrey most times over Jonathan Taylor. And listen, I love Jonathan Taylor, but so week 1, I'm watching and like Baker Mayfield is just not utilizing Christian McCaffrey. And I'm like, oh man, I really stepped in this one. Like, this is not a good sign. But that's a complete throwaway there. Sean, I know you obviously were at Soldier Field doing Bear stuff, but have you had a chance to go back and look a little closer at the Detroit Lions, their Week 1 game against Philly?
I actually have not. I spent a lot of time watching that Vikings-Packers game, but I'm a little behind on my Lions study, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's all right. There's not a lot to study there. They kind of look like the team that you expect, a little more explosive on offense, but still not very good. Mike Johnson asking Shane here, what are some interesting player props bet for Sunday? And Shane, before you, I'm sure you have plenty there, but do want to give this a chance to talk about an exclusive prop bet that we have this week.
Yeah. There's a prop bet at Caesar Sportsbook. You just go to their app. And it's from the Bet Chicago Sports Boost. It's under the boost, and the prop is a same game parlay, 3 legs. The first being the Bears spread. You're getting 10.5 points when the spread is 10 points, so already a value there. Justin Fields, you need him to run for 50 rushing yards, which he's done twice through 12 starts already in his career. And honestly, you expect him to be more involved against the Packers in the run game and lean on it a little bit more than they did last week. And then the third leg is a David Montgomery touchdown. He hasn't done that against the Packers in his career, but as Sean has reported this week, the Bears believe that he's going to bounce back, and that could happen this week. And so all you need is David Montgomery to find the end zone. His anytime touchdown odds are still pretty good. So the odds makers still believe he has a chance to find pay dirt. So that's the 3-leg parlay: spread, Justin Fields rushing yards, and a David Montgomery touchdown. And it's boosted to plus 750 at Caesar Sportsbook.
Justin, if I can jump in really quick, Justin had 74 rushing yards last year at Lambeau Field, so that would be pointing towards the over there.
I was going to say, Sean, I was shocked to find out from Shane there that David Montgomery has never scored against the Green Bay, or never had a rushing touchdown against the Green Bay Packers. Is it? I should double check there, Shane. Is it an anytime touchdown or a rushing touchdown?
Anytime touchdown for the boost. It does not have to be a rushing touchdown.
That's kind of crazy, Sean, that David Montgomery has not found the end zone at all against Green Bay.
Yeah, it is, and that certainly speaks a little bit to their team struggles against Green Bay. I think they haven't been able to put up a whole lot of points in recent years against these guys, and you saw them finally do that in that first half at Lambeau last December. And if the Bears are going to win this game, David Montgomery is going to have to score a touchdown, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're going to need David Montgomery to find his way to the end zone. Just because listen, Equanimous St. Brown got himself into the end zone, but I just don't expect that to be a weekly occurrence there for Equanimous St. Brown, or really this wide receiver core. David Montgomery is going to need to be the guy. But Shane, Mike had asked about player prop bets. Went through that one for the Bears. What else are you looking at this week?
Yeah, the prop market's always interesting, right? There's so many different options, and they don't release until later in the week, right? So it's just now I'm looking at some of these props because they're releasing on Thursday or Friday for a lot of these games. But I immediately went to the Bears-Packers game, obviously, and one that really caught my eye, Aaron Rodgers to throw an interception is plus 227 at Caesar Sportsbook, which I think is kind of interesting. Just given, as we've mentioned, his offensive struggles for this entire offense. The offensive line is banged up. He doesn't really trust his receivers. His wide receiver one is injured. I don't know. That seems like a juicy enough price that I'd be tempted to throw a little bit of money on it. I'll probably write up for it at shawlockwood.com/bet. It won't be a whole lot of money, but I just think that that's enough of a juicy price that I'd be tempted by it. I know Aaron Rodgers' record against Chicago is amazing, and he's usually really good in this situation. But he can still be good and throw one pick, and make one mistake. Maybe a receiver runs a wrong route, and the Bears take advantage. So I don't know. Plus 227, it has my attention.
I think that's a good bet. I mean, you look at the way Aaron Rodgers gives the ball away when he gets consistently pressured. You saw that in Week 1. The Bears, with that offensive line struggling for Green Bay, Sean, like that should be a situation where they should be able to get Aaron Rodgers off his points and moving around and under some pressure.
I'm just scrolling through the Aaron Rodgers game log here. It looks like his last interception against the Bears was in 2018.
God, the Bears are so bad against him. It's
the game that the last time the Bears won, that's the last time Aaron Rodgers threw an interception against the Bears. But that being said, I think we saw some promising things from that secondary with Jaquan Brisker in there now. And Kyler Gordon made a one mistake, but you know what? He's going to be a really good cornerback for them. At that price, I'm kind of with you, Shane. I mean, that's a juicy situation right there, and certainly you like the returns if that does come to pass.
Rick is asking here, will Kmet ever score a touchdown? Is he the most overrated Bear?
I'm going to say no, he's not the most overrated Bear, because I think he's really good. I just think that was really a factor of the situation of that game. I do think, if the Bears get into the red zone a little bit more, you're going to see Cole Kmet get some targets down there. The problem is, their offense was struggling so much in that first half. They weren't really able to throw the ball. The amount of rushing attempts is certainly a little bit of a concern there if you got Cole Kmet on your fantasy team, because the Bears are really trying to pound it on the ground.
Yeah, Cole Kmet. I don't read anything into week one when it comes to Cole Kmet, Rick. I mean, if you came into the season with kind of lower expectations for Cole Kmet, it's kind of been a mixed bag. I've noticed from Bears fans, Sean. Like, there are some people that really have a lot of hope for Cole Kmet, and there are some, and not it's insignificant, that I feel like have really written Cole Kmet off. And I think that's because of the expectations for him coming in, local kid out of Notre Dame. And a lot of people immediately think of like these dynamic tight ends in the NFL, right? Travis Kelce, George Kittle, the two that all automatically always come to mind right offhand. But like, that is a really rare breed. And like, Cole Kmet, was it 60 catches last year?
Yeah, I think it was 60.
Yeah, like 60 catches from Cole Kmet in the second year is
60
good.
for like 600 something yards, maybe.
Yeah. So Cole Kmet, is it what you want? No. But I do think that he's going to continue to progress. I don't think people are going to be disappointed in Cole Kmet. It might not be the the huge joy that people were hoping for, the huge hit people were hoping for when the Bears drafted him. But I do think he's going to be a solid contributor this year.
Look, you had a Matt Nagy offense that was struggling in 2019, had no tight end, no action at all from their tight ends. They might as well have not had tight ends. It was that bad. And you come out and you draft Cole Kmet, and that, you're looking at Matt Nagy and you're looking at where he comes from Kansas City, and you start looking at Travis Kelce, of course. That's just unrealistic expectations, especially for a young tight end. It's one of those positions that's notoriously difficult to pick up in your first couple of years. I think Cole's going to be fine. I do think he's still the number 2 option in his passing game, but besides Darnell Mooney. I know you didn't really see it in that 49ers game, but we certainly saw it a lot during training camp. He has a really good connection with Justin, and I think we're going to see that here in the next couple of weeks.
Shane, you got any sweet thoughts on Cole Kmet?
I did want to point out that last week there was a $3,000 bet placed on Cole Kmet under receptions for the 49ers game. So someone saw maybe the scouting report, the game plan, and said, hey, the 49ers took away Cole Kmet last year. I expect them to take him away again this year. Or they just knew that it was going to be a monsoon on Sunday. I don't know. But I did want to point out that of all the bets that happened on the player prop market in that game, that was the one that stood out. And obviously that person ended up cashing.
Now, you just reminded me, there was an interesting prop bet made on Justin Fields this week, wasn't there, from an Illinois bettor?
Correct. Yes. $1,000 bet on Justin Fields to win the NFL MVP award at 200-1 odds. As a person who has a bet on Justin Fields to win the MVP, I'm a little bit jealous because I will not win as much money if Justin Fields were to win the MVP. But no, that was very interesting. 200-1 odds. That is pretty incredible. Honestly, I mentioned this on yesterday's show, but I've seen some, people give out like, hey, Justin Jefferson's a good bet, or, Saquon Barkley. Justin Fields is a better bet than either of those two players. The quarterback has won the award dating back all the way since 2013. This is going to be an award won by a quarterback on a team that's going to finish as the 1 seed. We just know that's going to happen. It probably won't be Justin Fields, but it's a way better bet than betting a receiver or running back.
It's probably going to be Patrick Mahomes, but no, that's good value. congrats to someone who had $1,000 to spare on that. It made me think though. I think back, there was it's been like 4 or 5 years now, but I was out in Vegas during the NFL playoff one year and was in the sports book at Aria and noticed like a bunch of tickets laying there. I just kind of glanced down and started looking through them. Someone had left them. This person had made like 6 parlays, and they were all like 8 to 9 teams. It was a mix of like NBA, some soccer in there, and NFL games. And like they had bet like between like $300 and $500 on each of these tickets. There's about 5 there. I was like, you got to have some money to drop $300 on an 8-leg parlay.
Absolutely, it's the only way you can get really rich, right? Like these people just want to hit those parlays and cash out.
All right, we're getting here we're at the 45-minute mark. I want to start wrapping this up. If you guys have any more questions for Sean or Shane, drop those in the chat. So let's wrap it up though, Sean, and talk about let's get into our prediction for this game. How do you think this game's going to play out?
I hesitate to bet against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I'm going to pick the Packers in this game. I do think that the Bears can keep it closer, certainly closer than the spread. I think I'm going to go 21-14 Packers. I just think they're not going to struggle like they did offensively, Green Bay, in that first game. And I think there's some, you watch what they did last week, there's some ways that they can clean it up fairly easily. You still don't have a Devontae Adams, but you can execute a little bit better in some of those situations in the passing game. And, I think the Bears have a shot in this game. I do think both these teams are going to kind of keep it on the ground. And I certainly expect the Bears to do that. And I think their game plan is going to be pretty similar to what they showed last week against the 49ers, which I think is going to lead to a little bit lower scoring game. I got the Packers winning by a touchdown though.
I'm going to take the Packers to win 21-20. I do think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to struggle to get to that 21-20 final. Both of these offenses are a work in progress. The Packers not having potentially 3 offensive linemen for this week is really going to hurt. But until we see the Bears really take a step forward offensively that we're hoping to see this year under Luke Getsy, it's hard to take. It's really impossible for me to take the Bears over the Packers. But I do think they're going to give them a game. But Shane, how do you think this game sets up?
Well, I'm a little nervous after hearing both of you give your takes and say it's going to be low scoring, because I think my favorite bet for this game is probably on the over. I think 41.5 is too low. And I just think that maybe the Packers find a little bit more success offensively, and the Bears can string enough together that I think that when I bet this game on a side or a total, it's probably going to end up being on the total, just because I think it's a couple points too low. I guess my score would be 27-17. I think that puts at 44 is the official number, and a Packers win. I don't know. It just feels like we maybe freaked out about the Packers last year after week 1, and they kind of bounced back pretty quickly. Wouldn't be surprised if you see something similar again this week. But also, I think the last time we all picked against the Bears, which was last week, they won. So maybe this is just a new thing, and the Bears just keep pulling off upsets.
Yeah, there was one of us brave enough to take the Bears, and John Sally, our digital editor here at Shaw Media, picked the Bears in week 1. So he's already off to a nice 1-0 start out in front of all of us. But all right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. Make sure you stick around at shawlocal.com all weekend long. We're going to have all your preview content, our picks. Staff picks will be coming out on Saturday. Shane, I have you covered on the betting markets throughout the weekend. We're looking forward to Sunday night, man. It's gonna be fun. Hopefully, we get some better weather than week 1. See how this offenses look out. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and say goodbye. For Shane Jackson and Sean Hammond, I am Kyle Nabors. We will talk to you next week.